Hello world. The point of this video is to get something off my chest. It's essentially something that I've been dealing with for a long time. It feels like a long time. I suppose technically, if you want to measure it according to say, oh well, a long time would equate to, say, an entire lifespan. A generously long lifespan would be 100 years. So if I said the thing that I was dealing with was 4 years, I've been dealing with it for 4 years, that doesn't sound like a very long time. But it's all relative, isn't it? And in my case, I have hepatitis C. And it's not the kind of thing that kills you right away. In fact, there's a small chance that the virus can go away, just on its own. You contract it, say, in a couple of months, it can just disappear from your bloodstream. That's what I've been told anyways by doctors at the hepatology clinic, for instance. And it didn't in my case. And in fact, when I first learned about it 4 years ago, I didn't even understand what it was. I thought, okay, it's something that people can catch. Obviously, it's some type of disease, virus, technically. And I didn't realize that it's fatal. That if it goes untreated, it will kill you. It, however, does not manifest initially. As the disease progresses, worsens, symptoms will start to show, but it's very late at that point. So closer to the point of dying, essentially, as far as I understand it. And generally speaking, this doesn't happen for about 20 years. That was the general estimate that was given to me, about 20 years. In which case, bad things start to happen. They start to show. And it's something that isn't immediately dangerous, in other words. It's not acutely fatal. I'm not going to drop dead tomorrow from it. But it is going to kill me if it goes untreated. And I've taken steps. I've done things to sort of secure a solution. There's medication that is available that cures the disease within 12 weeks. And it's not experimental. And it is something that, it is an option at this point. Like, it's not like, okay, a cure is off the table. You have 20 years, just go out and live your life as vibrantly as you can. And I have more options than that. Unfortunately, in my case, being a college student, I can't afford treatment, and there are certain things that I'm doing at the moment to sort of try and circumvent this unfortunate position that I'm in, and I'm doing my best. And I've spent about 2 years learning about the virus and exploring my options, and at the moment I'm exploring the best case option. It's essentially plan A. I'm not sure what plan B is, but plan A at the moment is something that I'm doing. I'm talking with doctors about it, and I'm trying to get treatment. And evidently this involves a lot of waiting. Like I said, it's, the first year I was told that there was experimental medication available and that I could try it, but it doesn't have a 100% success rate. And it might not work, and you take about triple the amount of medication that I would be taking now with this new medication. And unlike this new medication, which has a 100% success rate, generally it makes the virus clear in 12 weeks. It's been tested, and you don't feel crappy taking it. But with the old medication you did, and it was strongly recommended that I wait. So I waited a year, actually. And now I'm faced with yet more waiting. And I have to wait and hear back from the hospital and see if I'm actually going to be able to receive the medication. And the point of this video essentially is to talk about it, because most people that I talk to that I say that I have the virus, they don't respond in a way that feels parallel or equal to the way that I feel about having this disease, because I know that it's fatal, that it will kill me. I'm 30 now, so in 20 years I'll be 50. Assuming I live that long, assuming I live to be 50. I'm a hypochondriac, basically. I'm the sort of person that worries about his health. I've always kept my nose clean. I've never done drugs. I've been sober my whole life. And technically alcohol is a drug, and I've drank before, but I've never been drunk. Never smoked cigarettes. Never done weed, though I have plenty of friends that have offered it. I've always said no. And I've never shot heroin up my arm, which is basically the way that you contract this disease. It's the most common method. Evidently there are other ways that you can contract it, but essentially your blood has to enter, or the person who's sick, in the case of me getting infected, the person who's sick, their blood has to enter my bloodstream. There are obviously different ways that this can happen, but the most common or widely studied method is intravenously, through the use of sharing dirty needles, unsterilized needles, essentially. So it's essentially a disease that kills junkies. I'm not a junkie, and I don't have anything against junkies, and I feel sorry for them. One, for being junkies, but two, having to suffer a disease like this. Not that they're probably worrying about that so much, they probably have other issues. But in my case, I'm the sort of person that thinks about things, and something like this weighs heavily on me. And I've been told that one of the best courses of action is to essentially just appreciate things for what they are. Do what you can do what's in your power, and don't worry about what's outside of your control. It seems logical, but anytime I do anything, I stop and I think, reality sets in. Like, oh, well, that was a great picture, or that was a beautiful song that I played. And then I think, I'm not going to live to be 50. It always happens. There's no way to really discourage it. And I'm the sort of person that wishes there was a way. And at this point in time, talking to people about my condition, I haven't really made it clear that, yes, it's a fatal disease. If it goes untreated, I am going to die. Sooner rather than later. It's still 20 years. It's a long time. They could invent a free cure in the next 5. But until that happens, I'm going to be left with this feeling of doubt. And feelings like these are only exacerbated by people's responses when they don't mirror my own. Because I'm like, I'm going to die. This is fatal. And when I say I have Hep C, they're like, oh, well, I'm sorry. But they're not like, oh my God, you're going to die. And maybe they're just being polite. But for some reason I have this notion in my head that it would be more comforting for people to understand that, yes, this is a serious problem. It's not something that should be taken lightly. And generally the response has been, for most people, the ones that don't understand what the disease is that lukewarm, as if I had a cold. Oh, I'm sorry you have the flu. And again, I am not trying to self-aggrandize my condition to say, oh, or to say, oh, to attract pity. I'm just trying to communicate how I feel. And to let people know that, yes, I have this disease. It's fatal. And I've talked to a lot of people, my own family mainly. I don't have a lot of friends. And they never seem to react the way that I thought they would, because the moment I told them that I had Hep C, they just didn't seem that concerned. They were concerned, they were worried, but I don't think that they understood what that means. It's fatal. It kills you. You know, it's something that is is difficult to cure. And there was a point when it was impossible to cure, but now they found a cure, and it's not readily available, unfortunately. And I'm doing the best that I can. I don't hold it against anyone. I'm not mad at people for not responding the way that I wanted them to, mainly because I feel as though I haven't been clear. And I'm trying to let the cat out of the bag, essentially, and let people know or understand that yes, I have a deadly disease, and maybe it's selfish to pass on this kind of knowledge, to say there's nothing any of you can do about it. It's my responsibility, but I need people to understand that I have this. I'm tired of walking around like it's a secret, having it weigh on me. Every waking moment I'll wake up and I'll think just for a moment, you're not going to live to be 50. You're going to die. Everybody dies, you know? So, shocker! Oh, but in my case, I didn't do anything. And I still got this disease. And I'm trying to deal with it. I'm going to school. I'm trying to be responsible. There are days where I feel like I'm not. I pay my rent. I have a roof over my head. I have food that I provide for myself. I don't have to essentially worry about money. I mean, I'm a fixed income and I have to be careful with how I spend, but I don't want for anything. Lord Byron said, I want a hero. And I don't want for that. I don't want for most things. What I do want for is fairly unique to me, and not in the common sense. Do you want for food? Do you want a roof? Want for a roof over your head? It's like, no, I have all the necessities. Well, some would argue that I'm lacking certain things, but not the necessities. I have a lot to be grateful for. The people that I talk to always seem perplexed by my dark attitude. And I'm a person who suffers from chronic depression. And a lot of times people attribute it to that, or mental illness in general, which is something that runs rampant in my family. And I don't hold that against them. It makes sense from their perspective. And I suspect that a lot of my negative feelings lately have just come from the fact that I have this disease. I thought it might be the depression. Perhaps it is, but I'm taking medication for that. That's the problem with subconscious or unconscious anxiety. It doesn't always manifest itself in an obvious manner, and there is always something else that you could attribute it to. And I'm not the sort of person who's essentially efficient or deft at self-diagnosing. Who is? Ultimately, you're looking at it subjectively, at yourself. You're trying to figure out what's wrong. And when you're someone like me who struggles on a daily basis mentally, it's not always easy to see what the matter is. But this seems like a likely contender for the primary cause of most of my current woes. The idea of death is a frightening thing. I don't want to die. At least not right away. You know, I'd like to live a little bit. And one of the most discouraging things, people will say, look, you'll find somebody. Love, that's always something that I've searched for. Sought. Holy Grail. I've chased it all my life. Find someone like me, a poet. Soulmate. Because I've never had any luck with just sort of a commonplace relationship. Oh, are they down with you? Do they want to have your kids? Are you cool with each other? I never could really find someone like that. In my case, the only possibility was something grand, something romantic, something like me. I've yet to find it. There's one or two cases where there were people like that, or that there are. Unfortunately, circumstances prevent it from manifesting, from becoming a reality. It just stays abstract, theoretical, unproven, an impossibility. And one of the solutions is to wait. My mother, for instance, tells me, just wait. Give it 10 years. Give it 20 years. And I realized recently that I might not have that time. I feel like I'm rapidly approaching some type of obstacle, some type of event where I have to choose. And perhaps this choice is something that's presented to me every day. Do I keep doing what I'm doing, or do I radically change my life? And the disease, the hepatitis C, has made me think about this. More so recently, after a string of failed romantic enterprises, I've begun to contemplate perhaps I'm not doing things correctly. Perhaps I should try something different. Go outside my comfort zone. That sort of thing. I might not have enough time to just sit around and wait. To abide by time as I encroach on my regular duties, my responsibilities, going to school, getting that done. I want to be a professor at a university. Unfortunately, by the time that I'll be cultivating that, where it will be culminating, reaching its apex, its acme, its pinnacle, I might be on death's doorstep. I don't know. So that's the point of this video, essentially. I don't usually do this. I usually keep my feelings to myself. But in this particular instance, I felt it necessary to communicate that I'm dying. Everybody dies. But I'm dying essentially at twice the rate. You know, most people, let's say, they live to 70 or 80. Well, let's just be generous and say 100. You know, assuming there's nothing seriously wrong with you. You don't have cancer, you don't fight in a war, and you don't get blown up. My lifespan is essentially cut in half. And I'm just trying to deal with that. The point of this video isn't to generate pity. It's just simply to get people to understand that, yes, I have a serious disease. It's not no laughing matter. I thought it was at first. I thought it was something that wasn't fatal, something that you could live with. It is up to a point, but eventually you do die from it. And I just wanted people to know. I wanted people to understand the ramifications of having such a disease. So when I say I have hepatitis C, they don't look at it as something trivial. But they understand the gravity of that statement. And that's all that I want from this video. I apologize. Again, brevity is the soul of wit, according to Polonius. Unfortunately, like Polonius, I lack wit as I go on. And these videos that I record, despite the fact that I intend to keep them short, as I always do, I always stretch them out to considerable length. So if anyone's actually watched or sat through the whole thing, I appreciate it. I really do. They take the time to listen. Maybe I seem rational at the moment. Maybe I should be crying. You know, I always thought, well, give a performance. Anytime I'm in the hospital and they say, well, you need to get medication for your condition, your depression, cry. And it's never something that I can do voluntarily. Emotions like that come and go at their own whim. That's not something that I have any command over. So if I seem rational right now, it's just how I function. But this is something that's seriously affected my life for a long time. And I can't experience any joyful moment without at least reflecting on the fact that I have this disease. And you think that would make these events more precious? Say, oh, how beautiful this moment is. Brandon Lee once said, quoting one of his favorite writers, we tend to view life as an inexhaustible well. How many times will you look up at that full moon? 20, perhaps 25, and yet it all seems limitless. The idea that because of death, nothing is trivial. There's beauty in everything that we do. And you think, with that mindset, that I would be able to appreciate the beautiful things that I do and that I experience. But in my case, it always seems to not work like that. Despite the fact that I've done everything in my power up to this point to acquire some type of cure or solution to the disease, I've done everything that I can, as far as I know. That I would feel some comfort in knowing that. Some comfort in knowing that nothing is trivial and that the beautiful things in my life are still beautiful despite the fact that I have this disease. And in some ways, more beautiful in a romantic sense. Like Keats, who died so young. And Percy Bysshe Shelley said that he died from criticism of his poetry, and it made his poems seem all the more beautiful. Or Vincent van Gogh committed suicide, and then people look at his art now and view it in the tragedy as so much more beautiful than it would have been otherwise if he had lived to be 100 years old and had many different periods, like Picasso, and suddenly it seems more like a career rather than a tragic flash of lightning, all the more beautiful in a dark night, rather than the sun hanging in the sky, shining light from day in to day out, and suddenly it doesn't seem quite as majestic or noticeable. That contrast. And that's how I function. That's how I go from day to day. So having the death sentence hanging over my head, despite the fact that it may be 20 years from now. The virus might go away, any infinite number of things can happen. But I tend to reflect or cogitate on that in a very weight unique to myself. It tends to be depressing, unfortunately. Anyway,